It is going to happen. And I tell this to my regulators, some of who are in this room, I'm telling you it's going to happen, and you're going to panic. I'm not going to panic. We'll be fine. We'll probably make more money, and then some of my friends will tell me that we like crises because it's good for J.P. Morgan Chase.
I have a clip for you today with a gentleman called Jamie Dimon. Now, Jamie Dimon is the chairman and chief executive officer of J.P. Morgan Chase. And J.P. Morgan have always been at the centre of finance, and they're still there. They have their fingers in many pies, and they're one of the movers and shakers across the pond in America and in world finance generally. And this is a very, very powerful individual. And sometimes when these people come out, they just say things, and sometimes they're sitting there talking to their buddies, or they're in these in-depth discussions with people like CNN and Bloomberg, etc. But there was a recent talk that he gave, and he dropped these little truth bombs. Now, as ever, you got to take everything people like Jamie Dimon say with a large tumbler full of salt, because they're trying to manipulate the markets all the time, and they say things to move and sway people to make money. But in the middle of all this, he does tell you exactly what's going to happen. He predicts the crash. He also quite upfront tells you that he's not too concerned because they're going to make a ton of money anyway while the man on the street gets eviscerated. But I thought it was very interesting to listen to this gentleman talk, and he's telling you exactly what is going to happen. And, for once, I'm going to be in full agreement with the man.
These are very large numbers. You've seen it a little bit. You had the crack in the bond market in COVID a little bit. The government did the right stuff, then they massively overdid both spending and QE. We borrowed and spent $10 trillion from 2020 to today. Okay, and you heard the numbers before. We also bought $4 trillion of your securities, on top of the $4 trillion we bought in the first go-round. Those numbers are true globally, not quite as big as ours, but the QE of us was $8 trillion, the QE of the rest of the world was another $8 trillion or something like that. You're talking about huge sums of money. We don't really know the full effect of that. And the bond dealers, which Gary mentioned, inventories are much smaller than they used to be, partially because of rules and regulations. And you are going to see a crack in the bond market, okay? It is going to happen. And I tell this to my regulators, some of who are in this room, I'm telling you it's going to happen, and you're going to panic. I'm not going to panic. We'll be fine. We'll probably make more money, and then some of my friends will tell me that we like crises because it's good for J.P. Morgan Chase. Not really. I tell people when Credit Suisse went bankrupt at the First Republic, it was terrible for the banking industry. I think we can make everything better, including that, by just changing and modifying certain rules and regulations, letting market makers intermediate more in the market. But to give you a number, like just J.P. Morgan alone buys and sells $3 trillion a day. And we move $10 trillion a day of money. And we're probably a tenth. So the money moving around the world is $100 trillion a day. The money moving around in the investments, this is stocks, bonds, corporate governments, derivatives, credit, you name it, FX, sovereign debt around the world, $30 trillion. The people who set those long-term rates are those people, including you in the room. It's not the Federal Reserve. They can try to manipulate the long-term rate. They can do what's it called, they do the twist or whatever. It doesn't work for that long. So if you look at economic history, bad things happen. When those tectonic plates shift, it's very hard to see in real time. It is shifting, and this is one of them. I just don't know if it's going to be a crisis in 6 months or 6 years. And I'm hoping that we change both the trajectory of the debt and the ability of market makers to make markets. And also remember, there are a lot of people going down to Washington who actually like bad markets. And the problem with the bad markets isn't that it's bad for the big banks who make markets. It's bad for the people who raise money, small businesses, asset-backed securities, middle market companies, corporations, the United States government. And that volatility scares people. And then also it would have markets close. And you saw that happen multiple times in the last 12 years where you couldn't sell a high-yield bond. If you're going to sell a lot of treasuries, you could have had a little bit of issue. So yeah, it's coming. It's just part of all the stuff we talked about. And unfortunately, it may be that we need that to wake us up. It's an unfortunate thing.
So what exactly was he talking about? You're going to see cracks in the bond market. Well, simply put, that's government national sovereign debt. That's what that is. And what he means is that when the bond market starts to crack, that's when governments fall apart. And what essentially that all means is that money is going to flow from the lower and middle classes up to the people at the top of the tree. And this is the dirty end of capitalism, although it's the only system we've got and it's the best thing we've got at the moment because nothing else will work. It still has its huge negative aspects to it, and cronyism is only part of it. But the middle classes and everyone beneath them is currently being eviscerated, and they're going to continue to get eviscerated. And at the point where the bond market cracks and governments start to default on their sovereign national debt, then we are going to see huge sums of money flow into the pockets of people like this gentleman here. And when people like Jamie Dimon are talking about huge sums of money, then you get a feel for what that means. I mean, these people here, these, JP Morgan, they process, as he said, trillions daily. And so when this man is talking about huge sums of money involved, then I think we are talking about huge sums of money involved. And so what he was doing there, he was telling you it's going to happen, and it is going to happen at some point in the future. As I've said before on this channel, this is just another indicator along the way. It's just another dot to follow and link up. When the bond markets break and all hell breaks loose and they usher in a new financial system and they reset the currencies, as they're going to have to do, then all bets are off the table. Huge amounts of money are going to be extracted from people, and at that point there, the only wealth that you will all, in all likelihood, be able to protect is wealth outside of the system in the form of assets, which include gold, silver, Bitcoin, anything worth any money. Those are the only things that will retain any real value, and they will explode in value. And this is just another warning moment of that, because it is coming, and when it happens, there's going to be pandemonium, and whichever governments are in power at that moment, they're just going to have to deal with it. But as he said at the end, we're going to have to learn our lesson. And you know what? As much as I don't like gentlemen like Jamie Dimon, he's right. We do need to learn our lesson. We need to start living within our means. We've been spending on the credit card for far too long, and the magic money tree is dying and withering on the vine, and we've abused our powers of money creation. Governments round the world have been unable to say the most valuable word in human existence, which is the word no. We can't do that anymore. We can't spend money we don't have. And the financial system is so out of control, so much money is flowing around. My main concern is this: central banks around the world are buying it all. They're buying it all up. They're buying all the property, all the assets. And when this hits, a lot of people are going to be left with nothing, unfortunately. It's a very sad state of affairs, but it has to happen. There has to be a reset. We can't go on like this, I'm afraid. But it is going to be a bad time for a lot of people, unfortunately. Anyway, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.